The production possibilities curve is a great little model. We get a lot of mileage out of it. It's very simple yet very powerful. And what it does is it models limits. Okay, economics is about scarcity and limits and trade-offs, and this does a great job of modeling that. So, to the principles, basic principles of economics, as I just stated, it talks about limits and scarcity and trade-offs. So, well, let's just say trade-offs and opportunity costs. What is an opportunity cost? Basically, the best definition, really, it's what you give up to get something. That's it. Getting up in the morning has an opportunity cost. What could you have done instead? Going to school has an opportunity cost. You could have worked. You could have made money. You could have visited your grandma. You could have played video games. Whatever the highest valued alternative, that's your opportunity cost. See, you couldn't have done them all. You might have 10 things you could have done instead of go to school. You couldn't have done all 10. So whatever the highest valued alternative, that's your opportunity cost. Okay. Well, that's what this does, is it models the trade-offs and opportunity cost. And the process of simplifying reality, okay, that's what a model is. It's a simplification of reality. So by definition, it's not entirely realistic. Again, the objective of a model is to get rid of unnecessary detail. You get rid of the unnecessary stuff so that you can focus on what you're looking at. So assumptions with this model. Well, we're going to assume fixed resources and technology. Okay. And we're going to assume that there's efficient use of resources. Okay. So, this is just another way of saying the fixed resources and technologies. This is another way of saying that the production possibilities curve is at a point in time. It's not over time. It's not from point A to point B in time. It's at a given point in time. So at any given point in time, of course, resources are fixed and technology is fixed. So let's start drawing our little production possibilities curve. We're going to use the old classic guns and butter example. Over here on this axis, we're going to put butter. This is civilian type goods. On this axis, guns. Okay, or military type goods. Now let's say that we put all of our resources into butter production, and we can get that much butter right there. Okay, let's say that's 10 units of butter. Everything goes into butter, and we produce 0 guns. Okay, now if we produce here, that's inefficient. Okay, we're using our resources inefficiently if we're only producing this much. We've got idle resources. We're capable of producing this much. Out here simply is not possible. We do not have the ability to produce 11 or 12 or anything over 10. So inefficient in here, anything in here is inefficient. This is efficient. This is not possible. Okay, unattainable. Okay, so let's suppose gun production is right there. Okay, maximum gun production. If we produce that, nothing but guns, all our resources going into guns, we can produce this much. Okay, so let's say that's also 10. Now, we can produce various combinations in between. And if we map out those combinations, we've got what we call the production possibilities curve or production possibilities frontier. Now, again, anything on the curve, anything along this is efficient use of resources. Anything inside the curve is inefficient. Outside the curve is unattainable. So, let's say this point right here. Inefficient. We could increase our output of guns without giving up any butter. Or we could increase our output of butter without giving up any guns. Anytime you can produce more of one good without giving up the other, that's inefficient. All we have to do is employ idle resources to do that. But once we're on the curve, the only way we can produce more of one good is to give up the other good. So let's take a look at let's suppose that we're here. We're here producing all butter. We're working hard. We've got a nice standard of living, and all is great. But then the folks on the other side of the hill start to notice how good a living we provide for ourselves, and they're getting envious, and they decided that they're going to come and take it away from us. So we've decided that we'd better produce some guns to protect ourselves from these people. So let's say we're going to produce one gun right there. What must we do to produce that one gun or one unit of guns? That means we're going to be on this point. The only way that can happen is if we give up some butter production. Got to transfer resources away from butter and into guns. So we're producing that right there. We're producing one gun and let's say 8 butters. Now, what was the opportunity cost of producing that unit of guns, that first unit of guns? Well, we went from 10 down to 8 butters. We had to give up resources producing butter to produce the guns. So 2. We gave up 2 units of butter to produce that one gun. Well, let's say these guys are looking pretty mean, and we'd better have some more guns because they're coming after us. So we go for one more. Now we're at this point. And now we're down to 5 butters. Well, what's the opportunity cost of that second unit of guns? Well, we went down from 8 to 5. So that second unit cost us 3 units of butter. So the question is, and we'll talk more about this in the next little video, the first unit of guns, our opportunity cost was 2. We went from 10 down to 8. Our second unit of guns, we went from 8 down to 5. Now, why was the opportunity cost, which is an opportunity cost of 3, right? So the first unit of guns, the opportunity cost was 2. The second unit of guns, the opportunity cost was 3. Why did the opportunity cost increase? Now, this is why we bowed the curve outward, because it models this. Sometimes called the law of increasing opportunity cost or the low-hanging fruit principle. Well, when we go to transfer resources away from butter and into guns, which ones do we transfer first? We transfer those resources best suited for gun production and least suited for butter production. Those are the ones we transfer first. The outward bow in the production possibility curves models the fact that resources are not equally excuse me, I had to cough. Resources are not equally suited for all types of production. So the low-hanging fruit principle simply said, which is also called, has a lot of names, increasing opportunity cost, low-hanging fruit. So you pick the low-hanging fruit first. And therefore, since you're choosing the best resources for producing guns and the least good resources for producing butter, you transfer those over first. You don't have to give up so much butter to produce that first unit of guns. So, for example, during World War II, they converted auto factories over into tank production, because auto factories were similar. I mean, you know, they were making automobiles instead of tanks, but they could be retooled to make tanks. And there was actually 1 year of the war that no new cars were made at all. They were all producing tanks, or some other thing, airplane parts and whatnot. So those were the first convert. They did not convert dairy farms over into tank production. Now, they may have done so if they were, you know, if we had to get clear over to here, and that is a possibility. So, but they start with the autos. Now, the next bit, as we go from 1 to 2, that second unit, see, we've already transferred our best resources for gun production and our least good resources for butter production. Now we have to transfer our next best resources for gun production. And some of those resources are going to be a little bit better at butter production. So to squeeze out one more unit of guns, it's going to cost us a little more in the area of butter production. Okay, well, we'll talk more about that in another video, but just that's why it's bowed out. Okay, so we see the trade-offs. We see that as long as we're on the curve, the only way we can get more of one good is to give up the other. When we're inside the curve, that isn't the case. We can get more of a good without giving up the other, and that is inefficient. Now, as far as, let's say, this point right there, that is unattainable. Okay, you cannot have 10 butter and 10 guns. You can't. We don't have the resources for that. But maybe in the future we can. See, the thing about this curve is that over time it shifts out. As resources increase, as better technology comes along, this curve will shift out. So in the future, this point right here that was unattainable back at this period of time, back this point in time, is available now. And that's exactly great. World War II is a great example of that. We were sitting in here inside, well inside the production possibilities during the Great Depression, and then World War II came along, and all the spending, all the investment into military goods to support the war shifted us and got us back here onto the curve, but it not just got us back onto the curve, it shifted the curve out. So unemployment, for example, during the Great Depression hit a high of 25%. Out here, during the height of World War II, it fell to 1%. So we not only got back to the curve, employing all those idle resources during the Depression, it expanded the curve. We call this expansion of the curve, where it shifts out, economic growth. And how fast and how far that curve shifts out is something we do have some control over. For example, do we, here I've got the curve shifting out pretty far each time in comparison to, say, this one, where it just shifts out a little bit each year, okay? And that involves a trade-off between consumer goods and investment goods, which will be the topic of the next video.